Talk Radio.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening.
We, the people, tell the government what to do. It doesn't tell us. Our Constitution is a document in which we, the people, tell the government what it is allowed to do. The man is not free unless government is limited. And informed patriotism is what we want. But still watch closely. And don't be afraid to see what you see.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. For as a wise man once said, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it.
When in hell are all you people going to wake up?
Moretti Underground, the Liberty Report.
Well, hello, America. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Monday, March 24th, 2014 edition of Moretti Underground, the Liberty Report. We're broadcasting live from right here at PRN Radio Network, the exclusive home of the Watchmen of America program. Hey, here's a shout-out for all those Watchmen. I'm your host, by the way, Joanne Moretti, and my great co-host, JoJo Norton, will be here soon to join me, and we're very happy you tuned in with us. Thank you so much. Our call-in number, as always, is 714-888-7404. And our always awesome colleagues, Lynn and Anna and AstroTurf, are all manning the chat rooms, both here at PRN and at Blog Talk Radio. They put all the links to our reports and sources and documents and other important information into the chats as a convenience to you. These ladies, as well as our rest of our team, are fantastic researchers, bloggers, and a couple even have their own newspapers. We have a huge team, and I'm sure you know a lot of them in the chat room, and we even have a production manager. His name is Scott. Anyhow, here's a shout-out to all of them, and please say hi to them when you get over to the chat rooms. Today we have a great show lined up. We have lots of news to get to, and we have a couple of guests, too. Carol Ray, you all know and love her, our financial guru. She's going to be giving us a financial and an IMF update. Where you guys hear what she has to tell you this time. It's awful. And then in our second hour, an alumni to the show, Curtis Kiko Reed, will be joining us to tell us the latest in the uprising in Venezuela. We've taken our eye off that, but he's here to give us an update. But before we begin, we must do our disclaimer. That's just to let the FCC and the feds and anyone else who might be interested. Whatever's said on this show is solely my responsibility and not that of our gracious host, the Watchmen of America or PRN Radio Network. It goes like this. The comments made by hosts and or guest hosts or phone callers of the PRN Radio Network do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints, ideology, beliefs, or anything else of the members of the Watchmen of America program or the Patriot Resistance website, either in past, present, or even in future broadcasts. So now that that's out of the way, let me open up JoJo's mic and we'll get this party started. I see that she's called here, so let me see if I can get this microphone open. I did it. Hey, JoJo, how you doing?
I'm good. I've been busy. How are you doing?
I hear you. Been very busy, huh?
Yeah. Busier than a one-arm paper hanger? Is that how it goes?
Yeah, or a one-legged river dancer.
Yeah, there you go. I think it's in the River Dancer.
Yeah, I want to thank the big boss man around here, Freebird, for loading up all the shows so far and fast. And, yeah, he was real good about putting the links up and everything today. So thank you, Freebird. Good job. So, what are you doing? You hear about that mudslide in Washington?
Yeah. I haven't kept up with it, but they've got some fatalities and some missing people, right?
Yeah, well, they got a total of 14 dead now. I just saw an update that the sheriff said that there's 6 more confirmed deaths. So that brings a total to 14. So please, let's say a little prayer for the survivors and for the deceased. That's awful. Also today...
if you're on the West Coast, you might ought to be keeping an eye on the earthquakes. There's a lot of uptick in earthquake activity in the Pacific Ring of Fire. So you might want to kind of keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I know. They had quite a few shakers over the weekend, 6 and up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right.
Yeah. Hey, that little girl that we've been following, the one that's being held by the Department of Children and Families up there in Massachusetts, Justina Pelletier. Well, the Liberty Counsel filed a contempt of court motion against the DCF today. The judge was supposed to rule on whether or not she was going back to her family last Friday. And also the judge had said that she could go back to Tufts under the care of her original doctor and that she could be removed out of Boston Children's Hospital. Well, there was 3 weeks ago, March 3rd, Joseph Johnson approved the written agreement transferring the care. Well, DCF hasn't even made an appointment with Tufts yet. Yeah, so they had, there's I don't know what the heck they're trying to prove over here. They're probably trying to save face and wait for the media to lose interest in this case. But tonight, Anonymous is over having a tweet-a-thon at Twitter. So if you guys see a Free Justina hashtag, Anons are really working hard, and they publish the judge's address. They publish all kinds of stuff. Anons all over this. But this
this is not like one of our congressional hearings that gets blown off and blown off and blown off. The longer this girl waits, her health's in jeopardy. So they need to get off the pot.
They've been withholding treatment. They've been withholding treatment on this kid now for 15 months.
They need
and she's getting worse and worse and worse.
They're playing ping pong back and forth in the courts. We don't have time for that.
Well, actually, this is a power struggle.
And it's ping pong back and forth. They need to quit and settle it and let's get on before we lose this kid.
Yeah, well, this is a power struggle between parents and the state. And this next story that I'm going to bring you, now that we've caught up with Justina, a mother was trying to pick up her special needs son from school, and she wound up in handcuffs and put the school on lockdown. They called this woman up and said that her special needs kid was having a meltdown. Come to the school and get him. So she went to the school, and when she got there, she was talking to the woman. She didn't sign in on the guest book. Anyhow, the woman knew she was there, but she heard her kid screaming down the hallway. So they said, well, you got to sign in. She said, well, just bring me the book. And the secretary said, oh, I already called the cops. Check this story out. A mother trying to pick up her special needs son from school winds up in handcuffs and puts the school on lockdown. This is from KMOV. The furious mother came to News 4 claiming the school handled things all wrong. The incident took place at Walnut Groves Elementary School on Thursday when the mother came to help her son. I was lying in bed when I received a frantic phone call from the teacher. Michael was panicking, said Nakia Williams. Michael Williams' son, and he suffers from Asperger's syndrome. After getting the call, Williams came up to Ferguson Florissant School, where she was buzzed in by school officials. I saw her teacher, and she said, Mrs. Williams, what's wrong? I said, something is wrong with Mikey, and proceeded to go straight to my son, said Williams. She got to her son's classroom and immediately started to console him. Then the school principal informed her she was violating school policy by not signing in. I didn't sign the book, but I had to check on my son. You can bring me the book, she said. Oh, no, I've already called the police. She said, you called what, said Williams. Calverton Park Police responded to the call that came out as an unauthorized entry to school. The school was also put on a 12-minute lockdown, and a letter was sent home to parents. They escorted me away from my son, who already has emotional distress. 4 officers told me to turn around and put my hands behind my back. I was under arrest, said Williams. She was taken to the police station on trespassing charges, but Williams said she's a known parent. In fact, she met with the principal on Wednesday about a separate issue. She felt her arrest was unnecessary. When asked if there needs to be discretion used, Williams said, well, yeah, I feel like today I got arrested for being a concerned parent of my child. And that brings us back to it, JoJo.
Mm-hmm.
You are only a babysitter for the state's property, according to the state.
It's
you know,
what it sounded like.
Yeah. I mean, when do mass murderers sign in?
I mean, I know, you know, that they got rules and stuff, but like she said, she was a known parent, and yeah,
they called her. They were expecting her.
I know. You got to have to back up from the black and white sometimes. We got to have a little gray area here. We have to have some common sense.
Yeah, well, if you talk to the teacher, and the teacher calls you Mrs. Williams, obviously she knows you.
Well, the Gestapo tactics all across America needs to back up and have some common sense.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Hey, First Lady Michelle Obama's in China, you know.
Oh, yeah, I know.
The hotel she's staying at.
On our dime.
Yep.
Well,
the hotel she's staying
dime.
at. They told her.
$1,000.
They told. Dime is right. We're paying for this because it's some sort of an educational forum or something that she used to cover the trip, so we would have to pay for it. But she's being really terrible, and the news media are flipping out. They've been shoved and screamed at and blocked from events in China, and they're not saying what she and the president and his wife talked about, and all kinds of crazy stuff going on up there.
Well, I thought our news media did not get to go with her, so this is the Chinese news media?
No, we had pool reporters got to go, but they're being blocked and all kinds of stuff. Listen to this from the Washington Examiner. First Lady Michelle Obama's spring break trip to China with her daughters and mom has received some glowing news reports, but not because her press corps has had an easy time covering the event-filled trip. Reporters say that they have been blocked from events, screamed at by officials, held back with red tape, and told not to move from pre-positioned lookouts, possibly to avoid taking embarrassing photos. I mean, if you took a picture of Michelle Obama next to the First Lady in Japan, she would look like an Amazon woman. That woman's tiny and petite. So
our buddy Scott has kind of blown up a few pictures of the two to his amusement, and they're quite funny, as a matter of fact. You know,
our production manager, Scott, is a whiz with photographs, and boy, he can distort some pictures. He can Photoshop his little brains out.
Yeah.
Anyhow, another from Friday said that the officials wouldn't dish what the First Lady and Chinese President Xi Jinping talked about or even ate during their dinner. On Sunday, reporters were rushed out of the First Lady's meeting with educators, students, and parents for one of her big events to discuss education inside the U.S. Embassy. Although pool photographers were allowed to take pictures of the round table, the names and bios of the participants have so far been withheld by the Obama White House, and the pool was only allowed to hear roughly 4 minutes of an opening comment. And later, the same reporters had to quote news officials on what the first family had for lunch, because they were not told, nor did they see. And for that photo opportunity on the Great Wall, reporters and photographers were pre-positioned to catch the first family walking toward them. Photographers and reporters covered the visit were sent ahead to Tower 15 and told they could not move from the top of the tower until told to do so. After a while, we could see Mrs. Obama, Malia, and Sasha walking down the steps through Tower 14 and down towards Tower 15, wrote McClatchy. That's the Beijing bureau chief. So had photographers been able to shoot from Tower 14 as the family walked north, the photographs would have captured them walking the wall with the massive rock inscription on the hillside above them to the north, which read in Chinese characters, "Loyal to Chairman Mao," he added. So they were walking by that. Oh, and you know what else? They weren't allowed. They're selling T-shirts in the street of Obama's picture, but he's dressed in Chairman Mao uniform.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and they're selling like hotcakes on the streets in China.
Well, it's pretty close.
But they didn't. They didn't want us to see those.
I'm sure the kids will get one as a souvenir to bring back home.
Absolutely. The New York Times reporter says that Obama's White House is the greatest enemy of the press freedom. We know about that. We're going to talk about that. But this guy here, James Risen, not Rosen, his name is Risen, Risen. This is from Mediaite. New York Times reporter James Risen has been in a years-long legal battle against the government to reveal one of his confidential sources, even petitioning the Supreme Court to hear his case. He's been very critical of Obama administration for its aggressive use of the powers of the government to try to rein in independent national security reporting. And in recent journalism forum, Risen took another shot at the White House for being an enemy of the press freedom. In fact, Risen went as far as to say the current administration is one of the biggest threats to freedom in a while. So guess he's getting audited and probably canned.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, for real. And, you know, these attacks on the free press, you know, they got a bill coming up, and it's supposed to be a shield law bill. And they're all touting this like we're going to protect the press. No, they are not. You know what they're doing with this bill, JoJo? They are making it. They made the bill so that you can only be classified as the press if you work for one of the major networkers.
Right, that leaves us out.
Yeah, that leaves bloggers, people like you and I, they don't think that we're real journalists. Well, you know, we do have freedom of speech, and I'll publish, and I will speak about, and I will blog about, and I will write about anything that I feel like writing about. But, you know, they're not going to shield me because they'd say, oh, yeah, you're not an official reporter because you don't work for NBC. Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about this. I got a couple of things that I wanted to bring up, JoJo. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Sorry about that. We got pollen down here, and it's kicking my butt. Today I wrote this morning that, you know, we're never going to get the truth about MH370, that Malaysian plane. I do believe General McInerney is right, by the way, and we're going to get into that, why I believe he's right. It's a Malaysian plane, not even an American plane, so why are we footing all the bill? We didn't have this response for Americans in Benghazi, did we? Meanwhile, Michelle Obama is in communist China with no reporters allowed. Obama is in Amsterdam on his way to the NWO IMF Global Currency / Nuke Summit. And you know that means we'll be squeezed to donate more money and lose our sovereign currency. Carol's going to be here to discuss that. Putin is marching through the Ukraine. Soros, with backing from the U.S., overthrew the president of the Ukraine and installed the Orange Revolution throwbacks from Soros' first attempt. They're pressuring the U.S. to intervene. Meanwhile, the European Union is crying poverty, and they won't even help themselves. As a matter of fact, Angela Merkel just said today that there will be no interference militarily on the Ukraine against Putin. So they want us to do it, right? They want to just sit back and say, oh, ho, ho, we're so broke, so come help us. No, help yourself, guys. The Ukrainians wanted weapons.
Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia wants us to attack Syria for them.
Right. Anyhow, the Ukrainians wanted weapons, and Obama gave them MREs, meals ready to eat, rations. Can you imagine the escalation if Obama actually did arm them against Putin? You know Putin would bring that home to Obama. He would correctly believe that Obama declared war on him. Let the EU handle it. Like I said, they have weapons. Each European Union country has a standing military, and they have assets. Still think it was a good idea to get rid of the space shuttle program, by the way, folks? What about the space station we built? How are we going to get there? Iran continues to enrich uranium. Israel is being insulted and pressured into a suicide pact by Kerry, Obama, and previously Hillary. Hamas continues to bombard Israel with rockets. Israel's closed all their embassies due to an alleged strike. It's an employee strike, though, right? Not a military strike. Obama is trying to overthrow Netanyahu. North Korea just launched 25 more rockets, and we're using that missing plane to move and deploy assets. Venezuela is escalating, and that situation going on down there in Venezuela is right in our own southern hemisphere. Kiko Reed will be here in a little while to talk to us about that. Obama's giving away control of the Internet to an international body. Imagine the loss of the First Amendment that's going to bring. Obamacare is destroying our health care system, insurance industry, and our wallets, and they're coming for the guns. So perhaps playing Where's Waldo with this plan is not the best plan anymore. And like I said, they're never going to tell us the truth. But I guarantee the United States Intel, the Mossad, the KGB, they all know where that is. And a matter of fact, that company, I want to talk about Freescale for a minute. There were 20 people on that plane who worked for a company called Freescale Semiconductors. We've talked about that. We talked about the patent that they had for cloaking radar communications, missile defense tracking. That's what they did. Maybe they stole the plane to prove they could. You know, they were working on cloaking and radar and chips, communication chips. Now, there was 4 guys out of the 20 in particular that were holders of a patent for this device, this cloaking device. They worked for Freescale. They were Chinese. They worked for Freescale. There were 20 employees, but 4 of them in particular were owners of this patent, along with Freescale Semiconductors. So there were 5 owners altogether. Each of the owners had 20% stake in this. That patent was just approved 4 days after the plane was taken. So it was approved on the 12th. The plane was taken on the 8th. If those people were killed before the patent was approved, Semiconductor gets everybody's share. If they were killed after the patent was approved, Semiconductor still gets their 20%, but the heirs to the other 4 guys will get their portion of it. So that is another reason why, we should be very suspicious about this plane. Was the blueprint for this patented item on the plane? How about a prototype? Was that on the plane? They say that this plane, they tracked it with radar and whatever, and it went south. We're all looking in the South Chinese Seas. That's crazy. That didn't go south. And people are saying, okay, well, maybe there was a fire on board and everybody was knocked out and communications were knocked out. Well, if there was a fire on board bad enough to knock out communications, it would have knocked out the computer that they reset for the flight plan. If it's going to burn up one component, it's going to burn up all components. They're all connected to the same computer system. So it's not just going to burn one, it's going to burn all. The plane would have burnt up and fell out of the sky. It would not have flown for 7 more hours, not this plane. Maybe the little plane that they're talking about did, but not this plane. As far as satellites and radar, does anybody actually believe we don't know where that plane is? They can tell you your license plate from space, but we don't know where this plane is.
Let's back up. Netanyahu went on full alert Friday a week ago. He didn't go on full, because of this airplane, he didn't go on full alert without knowing what was going on. He knows where that plane is, just like we do. And let me add something else to this strike, this so-called pulling everybody back, closing all these embassies because of a strike, first time ever in history. I don't believe it. I can't prove it, but my intuition tells me there's something else behind it. And next Monday, I'm going to cover this blood moon thing because it's really fascinating me. In history, 4 or 5 big things have happened in Israel during the blood moon. It's the Jewish Passover, which is April 15th. So next week, I'm going to cover that. But if y'all want to just look it up, just Google blood moons, and there's been 4 or 5. I don't have it in front of me. My computer's not working. But there's been 4 or 5 major events that surround or that have to do with Israel during this rare blood moon. It's very rare. It's also in the Bible, and I'll cover it more next week.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about the blood moon.
I just don't think this is an employee strike. I just think this is another chess move. There's something else going on. It's some kind of another cover-up or something. We'll know more next week.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it's very fishy. Now, this plane, why would you steal a plane and then ditch it? No, they want it for something else. Also, General McInerney, he's the one that made the most sense, and his story is identical to the story that our sources came up with. So the general is saying that plane was stolen. It was taken to Pakistan, and everybody's saying, oh, well, they would have seen it. Did you see the flying that was going on? That plane could have come in, piggybacked to another plane. To radar, it would look like one object, not 2, if it were close enough. Second of all, do you really think Pakistan didn't give them permission? Pakistan works hand in hand with the Taliban. So I'm thinking that Pakistan gave them authority to bring that plane into Pakistan. And I don't think they're done using that plane. I do believe that all the passengers are dead. But also, what if they took that plane down to the Maldives, to that base we have in Diego Garcia, and they questioned those people? They wanted that. I mean, this patent is worth trillions and trillions of dollars. They can buy them a whole fleet of new planes, get them a whole bunch of new employees. And, sorry for your luck, you're having to be on that same plane. But what were all those people doing on that plane? I think that they got kidnapped. I think they got questioned and interrogated. I think the rest of the passengers are dead because they weren't even hot, they weren't useful. And that plane is now waiting to be used. Nobody has claimed any responsibility for this. So that might mean that they're not done. But I heard a thing, too, that only 15% get claims. Hey, I see that our guest Kiko has called in early for a second. Let me open up his microphone. Hey, Kiko.
How you doing?
Hey, good, honey. You're a little early.
Well, I wasn't sure. You said sometime around this time, so that's all right.
That's okay.
Fine with waiting.
So,
how's everything going?
Hi, Kiko. It's JoJo.
Hello,
how you doing?
How are you? I'm doing good. It's good to hear from you.
Hey, let me give you a proper hello. Ladies and gentlemen, This is our guest, Kiko Reed. He is our Venezuelan authority. He's an alumni on this show. This is like his third or fourth appearance here now. But he's here to talk about Venezuela and what's going on down there, and then we'll get back to these other stories. How you been, Kiko?
I've been doing really good. I've been monitoring everything going on in Venezuela lately and just observing, and thought I'd call in periodically and kind of give everyone an update. I do share stuff on Joanne's page as often as possible, but it's hard to get stuff in English, and I don't have the time to translate everything, so I hope you guys are able to glean a little bit of information from what I've typed in there.
I translated a lot of the stuff you sent me, and it was terrible about that pregnant woman getting killed and the soldier got killed. You know, in the Ukraine, they were shooting at both sides to get the party started. Are you sure? We don't even. Who was doing the shooting?
Well, you know, that's an interesting point, and I think it's good to look at what happens in Ukraine and compare it to Venezuela. One of the things that the socialists do wherever they go, they know that they have to fight against the international opinion, and so they need to build a kind of consensus against their opposition. And so they are not above killing their own people in order to then blame those deaths on the opposition and say, you see, we're just fighting against criminals. If you look at Ukraine, for example, you hear this going back and forth about, well, are those Russian military that are in the Ukraine, in Crimea, or are those these supposed, self-defense, Crimean defense? And you can see how the media is a little bit confused. They say that they're Russian-speaking, they're dressed in uniforms, but they don't have any insignia on them. Some people will say that these are definitely Russian soldiers out of uniform. They're in a different uniform. I think it's kind of interesting, the concept that Crimea would have had so many thousands and thousands of well-armed soldiers in, Eastern Europe is not known to have a Second Amendment and to have the ability to run around with that kind of weaponry. And yet we're led to believe that these are just ordinary Crimean citizens who are trained in self-defense and have, the latest weaponry, AK-47s. And by the way, these are true AK-47s, fully automatic. These are not the kind of civilian AK variants that we get here in the United States.
Right.
But they use these forces then to say, oh, see, these guys, are just defending, but they have nothing to do with the Russian government. And yet those are the guys that killed a couple of the Ukrainian soldiers the other day. And
they're trying to downplay them like their neighborhood watch.
Well, yes, exactly. And it gives the government, the Russians, the ability to have a little bit of the ability to deny anything going on, and yet they can give direct orders to their followers. The exact same thing is going on in Venezuela. That's why they use what you've probably heard us talk about, the collectives. These are organized groups of thugs that ride around on motorcycles shooting into the crowds. So they have the National Guard generally uses shotguns with rubber bullets, although they've found them lately shooting actually glass marbles. They've loaded their shells with glass marbles and have shot those into the students, and I've seen photos of them removing them surgically from the students. So these are deadly. Yeah, it's just unbelievable that they're doing that. But the National Guard tend to use non-lethal rounds, and then it's the collectives, which are acting as these kind of paramilitary shock forces, which are then coming in and shooting live rounds at the crowd and killing people. That pregnant woman that you mentioned was shot twice,
my God.
So it was a purposeful targeting of this woman. It wasn't any accident. And the government says, well, these are just criminals that are running around doing this. But we have photographs and videos of these same guys on their motorcycles. There'll be 20 or 30 of them, and they're right there next to the police and to the military, and they're protected by the military. And then when the military goes in, these guys drive in and start shooting at the crowd, and they're standing right next to the military. So what they tell you in the exterior, in the countries outside, is that these are just criminals acting on their own, has nothing to do with the government. But you can see them working in concert with the National Guard. And that way gives them this... Go ahead.
Who's supporting and funding the opposition down there in Venezuela?
I don't know if they've got any funding. I honestly don't. You hear the accusation from the government that they're being funded, and there may be possibly some money coming in from the United States, because the USAID, the same one that was accused of using money in the Ukraine, has always supplied some money to opposition groups. But you have to remember that they also did the same thing for the Chavez parties, both before his election and after. And they say that they're trying to help to sponsor a healthy debate, and they support different groups bilaterally. They don't just pick one group.
Well, are any of the Soros groups coming up in conversation down there?
No,
like
not
US,
at all.
Like Democracy Alliance or Tides or even his Renaissance, any of that? All right, because that's who has been. That's who's been supporting the Ukraine thing.
Well,
this is a second attempt at their Orange Revolution. He even got the same players appointed into this new government. So we'll get to that, though.
Well, I think we know Soros has made his money by undermining the stability of governments and short-selling currencies, whether it's the British sterling pound or it's the euro, or he always does things like that and finds ways of positioning himself so that when things turn bad, he happens to be able to benefit from for example, I almost guarantee you that he probably short-sold some of the Russian companies that are now, their stocks have tanked.
Oh, yeah, so he did that 7 days before this all went down.
Yeah.
You're absolutely
right. So when he saw
there.
the signs that they were going to do this, he figured that there would be sanctions and that their stocks would crash. So I don't know whether in that sense, he's had control of the situation or he's just profiteering from this, but it's an evil, evil act to go in there. And I wouldn't doubt that he's also encouraging politicians to engage, but that's not what we've seen in Venezuela. I am a little cautious about, engaging that kind of speculation, because what we've actually seen is that the United States has been conspicuously absent for well over a decade. Starting after September 11th, George Bush focused entirely on the Taliban, and then he focused entirely on Iraq, and, to the detriment of our men in uniform, men and women in uniform. Mm-hmm. But they completely ignored Latin America. And in that vacuum, just like what we're seeing, the power vacuum of leadership caused by Obama's either evil intentions or his incompetence, or a combination of both, you see that other evil players step up to fill that gap, and that's what Putin is doing. Well, in Latin America, the people need to remember the Castros are not gone. Raul Castro is still around. He still has every intention of taking over the country and getting his hands on the oil there, and he has for decades. I don't know if you all realize that the Cubans actually invaded Venezuela back in the 60s.
Yeah, I remember that.
Were you aware of that?
Yes, I was. And Brzezinski was down there leading opposition at the time against the Cubans. Yeah, Brzezinski he was organizing down there.
Well, and the CIA actually led a counterinsurgency attack and captured and killed a lot of Cubans on a beach. March24 Beach is what it was called. I think it was 1967, the same year I was born. And the Cubans had sent hundreds of guerrillas into the country, and they had intercepted the communications and waited for them on the beach, and then they had a fight. Well, they've had as their prime objective to get hold of Venezuela so they could have control of the oil. And after you and I talked the last time, several weeks ago, I think it was 3 weeks ago, Raul Castro flew into the country to give direct orders to the government there, and he walked around like he was the actual president. In fact, ironically, there was a moment when on the national television station, VTV, or Venezuela de Televisión, they actually, you know how they put the titles up there, and they'll have the video of the person. So they had Raul Castro, and down below it said, the Venezuelan president, Raul Castro, goes to, the palace. And I don't know if it was a subtle subterfuge that someone within VTV was showing protest, but they literally made it sound as if the real president of Venezuela was Raul Castro. So it's kind of curious, either that or maybe it was a not so subtle hint.
That's always confused me, because you see the tight relationship that Obama and people in his administration and his friends had with Castro. I mean, Bill Ayers was down there a few times. Sean Penn was down there. Bill Ayers' adopted kid, Chaser Boudin, he was on Chavez's payroll, and Obama was fist-pumping him and reading his book and stuff. So, on one hand, he's allegedly fighting against Cuba, and on the other hand, he has never taken any stance. No, he's never taken any stance against Cuba. I would challenge you to show me anywhere where he's taken any stance against Cuba. He hasn't. His friends even go there and say that they wanted the great medical care down there. What was that? The big guy there. He looks like a Mucinex germ. Michael Moore.
Well, but he's actually tried to normalize relationships with Cuba and to open up travel to and from Cuba. You have to remember that during the situation in Honduras, when Mel Zelaya tried to, he violated the Constitution and tried to change the Constitution so that he could be elected repeatedly, and his own party and the Supreme Court removed him from power. Chavez and Castro and the Ortega brothers said that it was a coup d'etat, and of course Barack Obama sided with whom? With Castro and Chavez and Ortega. So his positioning has been consistently aligned with the left, with the far left. These communist regimes.
He wants to normalize relations. He wants to normalize relations with Cuba. He's staying as far out of this stuff going on in Venezuela as he could possibly get. He wouldn't even breathe a word of it, him or his administration.
No.
So
now I have some new news on this. I just saw that a House resolution has been proposed. I don't think it's been voted on quite yet, from the Foreign Affairs Committee. It's got 12 sponsors. Interestingly enough, there are 7 Democrats and 5 Republicans on this.
Yeah.
And would you like me to read who they are?
Yeah, what's the resolution about?
Okay, so the resolution from the page of Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart of Florida, an original co-sponsor of H.R. 4229, that's 4229, the Venezuelan Liberty and Democratic Solidarity Act, released the following statement after it was introduced by Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, another Republican from Florida.
Yeah.
Maduro and his cronies have unleashed a wave of severe oppression and frequent acts of violence against the Venezuelan people as they have peacefully taken to the streets to protest their legitimate grievances against their government. The brave Venezuelan people have been protesting rampant corruption, rising inflation rates, soaring unemployment, shortages of everyday products, increasing crime rates, and the erosion of human rights and political dissent. It is time for the United States to hold Maduro and his complicit thugs accountable for their gross violation of human rights, repression, and media sponsorship. This legislation demands, hang on a minute, demands a variety of substantial actions that names and shames those cowardly perpetrators. H.R. 4229 reaffirms Congress's solidarity with the people of Venezuela as they struggle to seek a better future. What I've heard is that, like they did with the Russians, they're trying to freeze the assets of the government officials. Now, this should send shivers down your spine, that these communists who are overthrowing that government are coming here, taking money from the Venezuelan people and coming here with millions upon millions of dollars and buying property throughout the United States, but especially down in Florida, and setting themselves up so that after they have completely sucked the lifeblood out of that country, they're going to come here, and we're going to have billionaires who stole their money, injecting that money into United States elections and buying communist candidates. And so it's interesting to me that the majority of the people on this list are Democrats, 7-5, when many of these people just a few years ago couldn't be bothered to stand up to Hugo Chavez. So once Chavez left, now there's not the sense of charisma, I guess, and so these people are finally standing up. Now, the Cuban Americans have always stood with the Democratic opposition, always. Since day one, you had Diaz-Balart and Ileana Ros-Lehtinen always there. But I'm surprised and I'm pleased, actually, to see some of these people, although names like Wasserman Schultz makes my stomach, curl.
Oh, God,
So here are the names. Representative Diaz-Balart, Representative Sires, I guess it is, Alvio Sires or Ceres.
Yeah.
Matt Salmon. Oh, by the way, Alvio Ceres, a Democrat from New Jersey.
Yeah.
Matt Salmon, Republican, Arizona. Wasserman Schultz, Democrat, Florida. Ron DeSantis, Republican, Florida. Theodore Deutsch, Democrat, Florida. Joe Garcia, Democrat, Florida. Gus Bilirakis, Republican, Florida. He's a Greek American.
Yeah, I know Bilirakis.
From the Tampa area. Louis Frankel, Democrat, Florida. Christopher Smith, Republican, New Jersey. So we've got a couple of good people from New Jersey, a Republican and a Democrat. I'm glad to see that. Federico Wilson, Democrat of Florida, and Patrick Murphy, Democrat of Florida. So that's the good news, is that at least we're starting to see some of the Democrats take a stand, whereas before they just defended Chavez. And you'll notice that there's not a single one of the Congressional Black Caucus in there.
Yes, the Wilkins there from Florida. Wilson.
Which one?
Wilson. From Florida.
Wilson, Federica is?
Federica Wilson, yeah, she's the one who wears those, pink, shiny cowboy hats.
Oh, no. I thought that was I thought that was that's the lady from Houston. What's her name?
Nope, not Sheila Jackson Lee. The other
Sheila
one.
Jackson Lee, another shiny cowboy hat lady. Well, actually, that could be an important turnabout then, because Sheila Jackson Lee was one of the Democrats who went to Venezuela and met with Chavez, and then came out and. While still in Venezuela during the 2006, Bush's second election, she came out and railed against Bush from Venezuela while she was there.
She did. Yes, she did. She's a real piece of work, that one. So what do you think the American people can do to put the pressure on to see, what we can get done down there and help out the folks in Venezuela?
Well, I sure would appreciate if everybody could reach out and push to pass H.R. 4229, 4229, to see if we can get some support from Congress for the Venezuelan opposition. It's very, very important right now. They have arrested Leopoldo Lopez. He has spent well over a month now in jail.
He's still in jail?
He's still in jail, and they're saying that he could be in jail for up to 30 years if he's found guilty. Mind you, all he did was, when the students were protesting because they were being attacked violently, he called for the civil society to join them in the street and go for a peaceful march. Well, then the collectives came out and shot and killed some people. So they're saying that he's guilty of murder because he told the people to protest, which resulted in the government thugs killing him.
I got to tell you, I checked that guy Leopoldo Lopez out, and I haven't been able to find any connection to any Soros group or any of those.
No,
I got to tell you that much.
I don't think you'll. I have absolutely not been able to find absolutely anything showing any kind of corruption by Leopoldo Lopez. I really think that we have a really, really stellar guy. Now, there's another lady out there, hang on a minute, Maria Corina Machado, Machado, I want to say.
Okay.
And she, let me find the exact name, make sure I get this right. I met her once. She is a lovely, lovely lady. And such, there's absolutely, Maria Corina, Corina, and the last name is Machado, Machado. Absolutely beautiful woman, very humble, honest as the day is long. She is currently she was one of the ministers in Parliament, one of the very few opposition ministers. She won in her district. And they never let her speak. Every time she goes up and tries to talk about what's going on, they shut off her microphone and turn the cameras away from her. Can you imagine that behavior in the Congress or the Senate? That if somebody stood up, they would boo her and turn off the speakers and turn the cameras away from her and tell her to get off the floor.
Wow.
She tried to speak to the Congress or the Parliament down there. They shut off her microphone, chased her out. She then urged the Organization of American States to have a meeting on this. And Panama, this is very important. There's several states, several nations out there that are supporting us. Panama, Honduras, and Peru are with us. Chile right now has a socialist president, and she's kind of hedging her bets. She's not getting involved very much. But those three nations, and Mexico actually, have been helpful. So she tried to go to the Organization of American States, and Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela didn't want her to speak there, so they voted against it. So Panama, check this out, they seated their own diplomat, and they gave her the honorary position. She is now a Panamanian diplomat speaking before the Organization of American States. So she gave a speech, but the Venezuelans and Nicaraguans wanted it in private, so it could not be broadcast, televised to the public. So they made it a private, secret speech. And then at the same time, she was in I believe it's Washington, D.C., at the Organization of American States. The Congress down there removed her diplomatic status and called for her arrest. So now if she returns, she could be arrested. So Panama gave her permanent diplomatic status, so she cannot be arrested. She has she now has immunity thanks to Panama.
Yeah, but she better not go back anyhow. She better stay in exile for a little while because they'll kill her if she can't.
Well, I think she'll go back. She's just that kind of woman. She is one of the most courageous women you'll ever see. And like I said, what really struck me when I met her in person, that was when I was the president of Free Venezuela and I was doing what I could. She had somehow heard about me, or she'd heard my interviews or something, I'm not sure. And when I came to this conference that she was giving, somebody told her that I was there, and she stood up and she said, "Where's Kiko?" And I waved my hand, and she said, "Come up here and sit next to me." So I was her honored guest. She called me forward to come sit next to her and speak with her. And I couldn't even begin to tell you what a humbling experience that was, to have someone of such caliber. It would be like walking into a room totally out of the blue and having a United States congressman or congresswoman excited to say, "Oh, Joanne, please come over here and sit next to me." And that's
not going to happen anytime soon.
Imagine if it did. Ted Cruz knew who you were, and all of a sudden called you up and said, "Please sit next to me. You're my guest of honor because I appreciate what you've been doing on your program." That is the shock that I received, and I've had a very tender spot in my heart for her ever since. And when I see how bravely she goes when they're attacking her, pushing her, they've punched her and hit her, and she remains calm but stands up to it. And you know that you're in danger down there. You could disappear, you could be killed, and yet she has stood up for it.
Well,
but I just
want
to say,
afraid of Lopez and her.
Oh, they're at a great deal of risk. The death count now is official at 34 dead.
Wow.
Many students, women. I can't even begin to tell you just how cruel. They've killed a baby. There was a baby that was shot recently.
I
they actually they go through neighborhoods and fire into the windows of apartments. So
I saw that. That's how that baby got killed. Yeah.
That was a terrible image. I'm sorry to have to share something like that, but it's so important
Well,
to
I'll tell you,
see
we
that,
better stop it. We better stop it down there because that will find its way here. And, you know, as you say, that they're taking all that money out. Sounds like Aristide did to Haiti. Left with all their money.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Well, there's some severe danger here. You know, because of Obama's bumbling politics, his meddling in Ukraine has inspired the Russians and the Chinese to say, fine, if you're going to get into the Ukraine or you're going to mess around in our little area, we're going to open up military bases in the Americas. So they've decided to open 3 military bases here in the Americas. And I cannot even begin to tell you, people, you had better really think very carefully what it's going to be like to have Russians training militant groups, just like they did in Ukraine, all right? Think about those guys dressed in uniforms without insignia with AK-47s trained by the Russians to go in and take over Ukraine. What can they do to destroy this continent in places like El Salvador, Guatemala, Brazil? It is a frightening, frightening prospect. I'm sorry, but the Russians are not. The Russian government is not a good government. This is not, you know, we're not talking, you know, Finland or Sweden or something like that opening up a base. These guys are bad news, and I think we face some serious danger. They closely coordinate with the drug cartels. They closely coordinate with the Iranian Hezbollah, and I think that we run the risk of somebody using a nuclear suitcase or some other type of nuclear device and attacking us and pretending, just like they're doing right now, right? You think it was not, it was just some terrorist group.
Yeah, well, people think that, you know, that they're going to come across this border with this fully assembled suitcase. They don't have to. They can come across this border with just their intelligence, and they can put that suitcase together right here on this side of the border, even if they bring a piece at a time over the border. You know, if you see a nut and a bolt or a screw in somebody's backpack, you're not going to say anything. But when it's put together with one of these weapons, you know, this is a coordinated attack.
Well, Joanne, it's even simpler than that, because the drug traffickers get hold of Learjets and other aircraft all the time, and they fly those across our border all the time. You could easily find a suicide bomber who would put a nuke inside of a jet and fly it over a city and destroy an entire city.
You know, funny you say that. They just found a downed one of those light aircraft things, one of those individual ones, and it was loaded with pot. They found it crashed in California in the mountains. And they found one set of footprints walking away. There was like 250 pounds of pot on board. You know, so if they can get across the border with one of those light things, they can get across the border with anything.
Oh my gosh!
I got to wrap this up.
Do
you have any closing any comments for our guests before we say goodnight to you and thank you?
No, just keep the people of Venezuela in your thoughts and prayers. If you could call your representatives and encourage them to support that House bill that I mentioned earlier, 4229. I would really appreciate it.
4229. All right, Kiko, thank you again for calling in, and please keep us updated on what's going on in Venezuela, because as you say, it is very, very important. It's in our own backyard, and probably right here inside our country. You know, if you can get anything else across the border, you can get all of this across the border too. Kiko.
By the way, one last thing. Let me just say that the protests have not stopped. They continue to go. So ignore what you hear on the radio. They are still by the tens of thousands out there for an entire month. So they have not quit. And keep watching, and I'll be posting stuff on your page.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Kiko. Go ahead, Jojo.
All right.
Hold on, Kiko.
Bye,
hold on.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, Kiko. Jojo wanted to say something to you.
Thank you. That's all. Thanks.
She's breaking up. She wanted to say thank you.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you very much.
All right, honey. Bye-bye.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Kiko Reed. And, everybody, we're back. You're listening to Moretti Underground, the Liberty Report, right here at PRN Radio Network, the exclusive home of the Watchmen of America program. You know, the Watchmen of America program is a really good program. It's a group of benevolent people who are out there training and working very hard to keep an eye on everything that's going on in the country and to make sure that everybody's going to be taken care of and, really check into them. They're a very benevolent group, too. Jojo, we're back. I was hoping Carol would have called in by now, but I'll wait for her for a few minutes. I just sent her a note over at Facebook to see if she was still calling in. We didn't do that, the Ukraine stuff or the IMF stuff, but that's coming up. Before we get to that,
do you want me to hang up and give her a call?
Sure, if you'd like to.
Okay.
All right. Anyhow, before we get to Carol, I wanted to tell you something that came out today, and it's really important. Obama's going to kill the Tomahawk Hellfire missile program. Now, some people would say, yeah, that's not a big deal. Yeah, it's a very big deal. The Washington Free Beacon put this out. Obama is seeking to abolish two highly successful missile programs that experts say has helped the U.S. Navy maintain military superiority for the past several decades. The Tomahawk missile program, known as the world's most advanced cruise missile, is set to be cut by $128 million under Obama's fiscal year 2015 budget proposal and completely eliminated by fiscal year 2016, according to budget documents released by the Navy. In addition to the monetary cuts to the program, the number of actual Tomahawk missiles acquired by the United States would drop significantly, from 196 last year to about 100 in 2015. The number will then drop to 0 in 2016. The Navy will also be forced to cancel its acquisition of the well-regarded and highly effective Hellfire missiles in 2015, according to Obama's proposal. The proposed elimination of these missile programs came as a shock to lawmakers and military experts who warned cutting these missiles would significantly erode America's ability to deter enemy forces. The administration's proposed budget dramatically under-resourced our investments in munitions and leaves the Defense Department with dangerous gaps in key areas like Tomahawk and Hellfire missiles, said Randy Forbes. And increasing our investments in munition and retaining our technological edge in research and development should be a key component of any defense strategy. And the U.S. Navy relies heavily on the missiles that they were talking about. All right. It looks like Carol and JoJo are back here, so let me open up Carol's microphone, if I can get it open. Hey, Carol, thank you for being patient.
Well, that's all right. I didn't mind at all. Tell our friend who reports on Venezuela to type in Open Society and Venezuela. He'll find an article, Protecting Civil Society in Latin Society. So Open Society, SARS is Open Society, is involved in Venezuela, as he is everywhere.
Yeah, well, it's just there's a lot of striking similarities, except the guy, Leopoldo Lopez, the one that's in prison right now, I can't find any dirt on him whatsoever, and I have been searching. So I don't think Soros has got his hands on him, but I bet you Soros' hands is on everything else over there.
That's true. He's everywhere. He's including in our economy, our financial system. As y'all know, in 2009, he was pushing China to join the International Monetary Fund, and also he was pushing for China to be the new global reserve currency. And also a lot of things have developed, which you're very well aware of, and I'm going to let you lead off with it, and then I'll add to it. How about that?
All right. Sounds good, because I got this article right in front of me now, and it's by Nigel Bolton Shaw. I think you sent it to me, as a matter of fact. Is the IMF planning to replace the U.S. dollar with SDRs? It says the International Monetary Fund is moving ahead with plans to offer a true global currency. Of course, the IMF has a global currency of sorts anyhow. It's the SDR, which is short for Special Drawing Right, a kind of nation-specific currency that has applications for the IMF lending activities currently, but is not in general circulation. Okay, so the IMF unit of account or currency is known as, like I said, the Special Drawing Rights, and it's being readied for eventual adoption as the replacement for the U.S. dollar in international transactions. to lead the way towards eventual adoption of the SDR or some other designated unit, like Carol just said, as the global currency, much the same way the euro was foisted upon the people of Europe as a replacement for their national currencies. Now, there is a meeting going on up in Amsterdam, and it's the G8, now G7 because they voted Russia out. They're supposed to be talking about nuclear proliferation, but instead they're talking about the IMF. Now, Russia's guy, what's his name, Lavrov, he is there instead of Putin. Putin was disinvited. But check this out. This is from Reuters, also sent to me by Carol. Russian officials are pushing for the International Monetary Fund to move ahead with planned reforms without the United States, which could mean the loss of U.S. veto over major decisions at the global lender. We are the number one supporter of the IMF, and they want to take away our veto power. Now, just like Obama wants to give away the Internet, he wants to give away the IMF, too. Russian Finance Minister Anton Sulyan brought the idea up at a meeting of the top financial officials from the group of 20 nations in Sydney late last month. 2 G20 sources told Reuters this week. The failure of the U.S. Congress to approve IMF funding has held up reforms agreed in 2010 that would double the fund's resources and give more money to emerging markets like China or BRICS. The United States is the only country that holds a controlling share of IMF votes, meaning its approval is necessary for any major decision to go forward. So now they want to take that away, and Obama wants to give it away. There's a bill going around right now in the House and the Senate. The Senate has one version, the House has another version, of a Ukraine aid package for $1 billion. But what they attached to it was this alleged IMF reform. They want to take money out of the reserve fund that we've been stashing away over there, like our bank, and put it in the general fund so they can hand it over to every tin pot dictator and every country that hates us and bail out the European Union some more. And every bit of it is coming from the United States, but what they don't want is our opinion. They want to lessen our vote. We don't have veto power, and it'll be a group of countries that will be in control of the IMF instead of us.
Right.
So
they want to set up an executive board. And some of, as we know, China, Brazil, Russia, India is also in the International Monetary Fund. And speaking of history of the International Monetary Fund, I, for 2 days on Facebook, on my wall, have been posting from the presidential archives and all speeches that our presidents have given for the International Monetary Fund and the Governor's Board plus the World Bank in support of the International Monetary Fund and Bretton Woods. Bretton Woods in 2009 was hosted, well, I guess you want to say hosted by George Soros in New Hampshire, and he was the person, the lead official there, speaking of a new type of currency, the SDRs. In 2008, he was speaking at the European universities, which was satellited over to some of the universities here in our country on the SDRs being the major global reserve currency. In 2009, the G20 met, when they had the meeting in UK, met with the International Monetary Fund on a new global currency.
Right.
The discussion was the SDR or Bancor, Bancor, and all. But right now they're sticking with the SDRs, which I feel like eventually they will probably change the name of that, and we will go with a physical currency. In other words, we won't have the dollar bill or coins in our pockets anymore. And one of the speculations is that it could be like the credit card that they've been pushing on society for a long time with the RFID strip. And then, of course, the biometric.
Well, yeah, it'll be just like the EBT cards or the food stamp cards.
Exactly. And you can really see that being pushed on Americans. And plus, it's also being pushed in Africa, all the third world countries. And also there's a good possibility on that. Now, this reform and all, if it is not passed by Congress and Senate, the G20 have decided when they hold their next meeting, April the 10th and 11th, they will force this on us. And now, people, I am stressing to everyone. Michael Nunley, who has a radio show with Brent Munlin, I guess that's how you pronounce his last name.
Yes.
And then, of course, y'all have been keeping up with all this, too. Michael and I talked last night. So I want to read, he and I had been discussing for hours last night on this subject, which I was passing some of the information that I had found and the information that he had found also. But this is what he posted this evening, and I want to read it. It's a very short paragraph, but it sums up what he and I were talking about last night.
Okay.
It says, I want to make it very clear that international geopolitics is a rigged game. There is something within the IMF that isn't mentioned at all by the mainstream media, and it's referred to as the SDR. Created in 1969 to supplement a shortfall of preferred foreign exchange reserve assets, namely gold and the U.S. dollar. And you remember Nixon took us off the gold standard back in the early part of 1970s. It says the value of the SDR is defined by a weighted currency basket of four major currencies, the U.S. dollar, the euro, the British pound, and the Japanese yen. SDRs are denoted with the ISO 4217 currency code, XDR. The SDR, which includes the dollar as the primary reserve currency around the world, but countries are giving up on the dollar because it's worthless with our intentional runaway deficit. And, y'all, you remember how much this president has added to the deficit when Bush went out of office. So we are plummeting. I mean, every day that goes around, the Federal Reserve is doing a pummo. They are injecting funds into the stock market. The end of this month, they will be injecting a whopper of over $4 billion. And he says also, I cannot express how much this concerns me because of hyperinflation that we have never seen before. An immediate 30% loss of the dollar, and trillions of T-bills purchased by our Federal Reserve. The only worth will be your personal assets. I would encourage you to educate yourself quickly with the potential loss of the Ukraine. It is very well could mean the dollar is over. Your savings loss of 30% or greater immediately. Your 401k, IRA, 30% loss immediately. If we lose the dollar, we are screwed. And he's right. We are going to be petrified. We go the direction of Greece, Iceland, the Vietnamese Republic. We've been duped, forget Democratic or Republican. They've all played this game. Learn and you don't have long. And he's true. He is right about this. What they have been doing, you create a crisis to solve a solution. And in 2010, as I have told y'all, China was demanding a new reserve currency during that time. The United Nations, during that time, had wrote official documents concerning a new global reserve currency. And matter of fact, they have issued, the United Nations had issued out a letter telling the directions for Congress and Senate concerning what questions to ask if there were any problems with any of them. And, y'all, this is a very, very terrible situation we're in. It is serious. April the 10th and 11th could be the ending of our petrodollar and of our global reserve currency, which we've had held on to.
And the only thing stopping them right now is the House, not the Senate. This International Monetary Fund reform is nothing about reforming it. It's everything to do with instead of just having our Federal Reserve dealing with our money and us and all that. This is going to be like the Federal Reserve on steroids. The IMF will be taking it over.
In 2000, I think it was either in 2000 or 2009 or it was in 2009, the G20 decided to allow the International Monetary Fund to become what they would consider what we would state a Federal Reserve, the major central bank, and which the International Monetary Fund is connected to the World Bank, and then both of them are connected to the United Nations.
Right.
This is a total takeover.
This is it. This is the big move, ladies and gentlemen. This is
that's it.
You know, like
this
I said, we thought the NWO was going to come for us. Turns out we are the NWO, or at least our administration is. And
right. We have been in global governance for a long, long time. It was just officially announced by Gordon Brown after the G20 meeting in 2009. Matter of fact, there were articles in the Telegraph Daily after that meeting where Tax Cheat Tim was supporting this new global reserve currency.
Yeah.
It has been on the table for a long time. And as I state, April the 10th and the 11th will be the turning point for our country and for each of us as American citizens. We are under Fabian socialist dominance. This is a global governance. We will be under the complete control of the United Nations along with the European Union before this is over with, because both of them are working to combine a federal union.
Yep, exactly. So, and the United States isn't going to be in control of it. We are ceding our sovereignty to this global body. So that is the New World Order. You know, I feel funny saying New World Order because it sounds so cliche. And I never would have believed this. You told me this 5 years ago, I never would have believed it. But all the studying and research that you've done and that we've all done, there's no other explanation for this. You know, we talk about elections and things like that. Let me tell you something. The players may change, but the game never changes. They are going through with this. You don't see Republicans or Democrats fighting this. You see a couple here and there. You see people like Rand Paul. He knows what's going on. Ted Cruz, he knows what's going on. But, you know, this story here that you sent me from Reuters, Carol, says a partisan political dispute over reforms to the International Monetary Fund looked likely on Friday to hold up the U.S. aid for Ukraine. So they're being sneaky, and they're making you think with your feelings again. Oh, yeah, we got to go help those Ukrainian people. You better read what else is in that bill. There's a lot more than that. There's $1 billion in just loans. There's $50 million in aid to support transparency and accountability and rule of law. Yeah, maybe we should spend a little of that around here. Every dime is coming out of your pockets. You know, I just told you a few minutes ago, the European Union is... Go ahead.
Right, and Joanne, we're not even sure that money is going directly to helping the people. It's just like all the money that the QE was spent went directly to Wall Street. And you know how the investors became very wealthy from this, and what has happened to them? They're losing their jobs, their inflation. We've talked many times about how food is starting to increase in prices and stuff. We are on the verge of being a third world nation, and I know that for a fact because I've been into their little schemes or their little articles and their documents and stuff, and I've read, and this redistribution of wealth is coming from us to destroy America, and that's the top of the line. And this is redistribution of our wealth, and it's not even going to the people, because if it was going to Greece like it was supposed to be going, those people would not be starving to death. They would not be lined up for food. Children would not be dying from being exposed to the cold because the parents can't afford to pay for the electricity or gas to heat their homes in the wintertime. And this is what we are financing nightmares. I am not for anything that involves dealing with countries at this time that we have no idea where our financial aid is going. And it's, you know, we've got cities that are filing bankruptcy. We've got families that need help. I am a full believer that we need to help Americans first, and then the world later.
Under Obama, the U.S. has a lower labor participation rate than Britain. That came out today. So our people aren't working. We have like a 33% at least unemployment rate right now. You know, these leftists, they think that America stole her wealth. They don't understand that Americans are inventors and innovators and hustlers, and they work 5, 6, 7 days a week. They don't work 4 days a week and take 6 weeks off for vacation. They work their little buns off, and they invent things. And then, you know, I mean, what they'd say that we stole somebody's resources. No, we didn't steal anything. You sold it to us. If we are buying, say, oil from somebody, we're not stealing it from them. We are paying them for it. Don't sell it if you can't afford to sell it. But we didn't steal anything. We earned it. So now we're the big bad guy. We got to cover everybody around the world. I mean, like the European Union. They won't even get off their rear ends to help themselves in the Ukraine. They want to sit back and have us do it for them. You know, why? Look at this plane. You know, who's spending the money to go looking for this? Who's got all the equipment that's gone out there looking for it? The ships, the planes, everything else. They're not going to find it, by the way, because it's not really missing. But, you know, Carol's right. And then you have Soros. 4 times in the last week he has come out with articles and interviews about the Ukraine. That tells me that he's up to his ears in it. All right, here's one article from CNN Money. It says that so the Ukraine needs a European Union Marshall Plan. Ukraine needs financial aid on the scale of the Marshall Plan that set Europe on the road to recovery and prosperity after World War II. Investor and philanthropist George Soros said Wednesday. The crisis in the Ukraine exploded last year when former President Viktor Yanukovych abandoned plans to sign an association agreement with the European Union and instead took Russian President Vladimir Putin's offer for help. That's what started it. Yanukovych wouldn't go along with the European Union. They have all those resources up there. Now the European Union is expecting to go for a free ride on the Ukraine's oil and other, you know, gas and stuff. Well, when they didn't go along with the European Union, Soros made sure that guy Yanukovych was overthrown. We all know that. And then she sent me a flashback. Carol sent me a flashback from 1995. It says Soros buys Ukraine. This is by Connie Bruck from The New Yorker, and it's dated the 23rd of January, 1995. Now, this tells you about his first Orange Revolution. Soros makes no bones about the interventionist nature of his role in the Ukraine. At one point, he remarked jocularly, "If this isn't meddling in the affairs of a foreign nation, I don't know what is." She's quoting from 2 sources. She says, below I present excerpts in the order in which they appear with my own green heading from Connie Bruck, The World According to Soros. Ukraine's own Mother Teresa. Of course, it's always a bit of mystery to see someone like George Soros behaving philanthropically, giving away vast sums of money merely to do good to others. To Ukraine, George Soros appears in the guise of a selfless Mother Teresa, and yet selflessness is such a rare trait that when it makes its appearance, some observers can only stand and stare at it and wonder. So they thought he was doing them a favor, and he supported that Orange Revolution up there in the Ukraine, and he failed. So now he's had a second chance at it, and if you don't believe it's Soros, look at all the players. And then that other chick, what's her name, Yulia? Carol, what's her last name there?
I can't pronounce her last name, the little blonde.
Yeah, Tomaszenko. Right, Tomaszenko.
Yeah.
All right, she came out and was swearing over the weekend and said, I just want to take a gun and blow off some of those effing Russians' heads. So
they also said about using the big bomb on them and cleaning out 8 million Russians in Ukraine. I mean, get rid of it, purify the country, I guess you'd say. And that's what concerns me. We know that it's a game and they're playing this, and I really honestly think it has to do with this International Monetary Fund. Why would they put the reform agenda in that bill to finance Ukraine $1 billion? And like I said, we're not even sure where that money is going to go to. Is it going to go to the people? They're hungry. Matter of fact, since the International Monetary Fund has come into that country, half their pensions are being taken away from them, just like what happened in Greece and Cyprus and everywhere else they've been. And all. I mean, you know, and then George Soros in 2009 pushing China into the International Monetary Fund, and China should be part of, quote, the New World Order, and then China should be the new reserve currency. I mean, he has dealt in pinned us and messed with us for years and years and years. He's done it all over the world. When a
he's got all the little patsies here, including Obama and Hillary and Kerry. They're all internationalists. And the bottom line on this whole thing is the United States isn't going to be a sovereign nation anymore.
No,
we're going to be
I wouldn't be surprised we've already lost some of our sovereignty.
I wouldn't be surprised either, Carol. Yeah, and with the loss of the sovereignty, we become just another in a bucket of countries, and we're all being ruled. We become subjects. We don't have our Constitution anymore. You notice Obama doesn't pay any attention to that, and neither does anybody force him into it. But, you know, if we don't have our Constitution and we're giving up our sovereignty, we're not the United States of America anymore. We're just another drop-in-the-bucket country that just happens to be under the jurisdiction of the global community. We're nothing. We were at one time a great nation, but we're nothing now. And people are waiting to get rescued here too. No one's coming to rescue us.
No, that's exactly right. Matter of fact, the United Nations on that Agenda 21. That's the reason why all the jobs are leaving this country. As I stated, I mean, you know, we're going to be a third world country, and I want to remind everybody about the OECD and our United States tax collectors and all, with 40 countries met to set up a global tax system. And matter of fact, the UK is starting to implement one of the taxes, and that is first it's on a huge tax on those that have wealth on their mansions. And don't think that it's going to stop there, because it's going to dwindle down onto the middle class. Because
a mansion is classified as any home worth $125,000 or more, by the way.
Right, exactly. And, you know, everyone, this is causing a two-tier system. Those at the very top that have the control and power. And then you've got the other ones, you've got the serfs. And there is no middle class in the center. And they are determined to destroy the middle class, because we have been the backbone of this country. And they've got to get rid of the middle class sector and that's what they're working towards. I have never seen anything like this in all my life. This is a total destructive nightmare.
Never in my life would I dream the United States would be where we are now. And every one of our politicians, and, you know, a lot of the responsibility ends on us, too, because we don't have unity. We're all sitting around waiting for someone to rescue us, just like the EU is, I think, because we should be in the streets. We should absolutely be in the streets. Don't forget, May 16th is coming up. Let's see what happens.
We have hard support, and we don't have that. I mean, you know, he is setting up. He told everybody when he was first elected, that he was going to have a private army, and everybody, you know, our intentions are good, and I don't want anybody in this country to be hurt, not whatsoever. And I lived through the Vietnam War, and I was a child during the Korean War, and I saw what came back from both wars, and then we've got Afghanistan and we've got Iraq, and you know, I wish I'm like Rodney King. I wish we could all get along, but that's not going to happen.
That's the thing, Carol. Our problem is not with strangers. Our problem is within. Our problem is our own administration. Our administration is doing this. And they're trying to take away everybody's guns, but he's arming the Syrians, and he armed the Lebanese. And the Libyans. And he's arming whatever, you know, rebel group that he feels like arming this time. He's even trying to arm the Ukrainians, but he wants to disarm you. He has armed, and heavily, with ammunition and equipment and artillery, everything, every single federal agency every part of the DHS. I mean, right down to the IRS and the Department of Education got shotguns and bullets. You know, so you thought that the civilian army was going to be a bunch of kids from Chicago, the ones that were, you know, all pledging to honor him. No, every federal agency and every one of our politicians is seeing it and allowing it. So I don't know what to tell you, folks, but you really better start prepping because we are just about done. It doesn't look like anybody's going to get off their couch anytime soon and start hitting the streets. So without even a shot fired.
Right, and I'm going to tell you something else. And the International Monetary Fund, John Kerry, of course, he's pushing this reform. He had the top cabinet and national security officials letter on an IMF to Congress and to the Senate. Now, I'm going to read y'all real quick a couple of the names, and then I'm going to let y'all go back onto your own talking. I want to let some of you people know who are some of the big ones that are involved in this. You've got Condoleezza Rice. You've got General Charles F. Wild, W-A-L-D, USAF, retired Deputy Commander, U.S. European Command, from 02 to 06. You've got Brzezinski. You have got General Michael W. Hagee, USMC, retired Commandant, U.S. Marine Corps, 0306. You've got, I'm looking at the names. There's so many of them. You've got Robert Rubin. You've got Condoleezza Rice. You've got Leon Panetti. You've got Henry Kissinger. You've got Lee Hamilton. You've got Timothy F. Gossner, Alan Greenspan. You've got all these names that have signed this letter to encourage our Senate and Congress for the International Monetary Fund reform. And so you've
all
got
those people you mentioned. I didn't know Rice was one of them, but the rest of them are all globalists. We have talked about how ruthless and sinister Brzezinski is, maybe even worse than Soros. Hagee, General Wild, Commander Wild. Yeah.
Right. You've got Brent Snowcroft. You know who he is. You've got Lawrence H. Summers. You know, he was up for
Larry
the
Summers.
World Bank president. And, the names are just unreal who signed this letter. Madeline Albright is another one. You've got, it is just unreal, the names that had signed this letter to encourage our Senate and Congress for the international monetary reform. And,
they use words like reform, just like they used affordable for Obamacare.
Right, exactly.
It's not reform.
Yeah, it's literally destroying us as a major player in all this. As a matter of fact, I don't care for the International Monetary Fund or the Federal Reserve. I think those are the two biggest headaches we've got besides George Soros.
I think they should be
his
dispersed.
fingers in it. Right. But anyway, that's what I wanted to read y'all. And I'll send you the link to this letter. And also, it was published. It came from the United Nations Global Governance, where they were recommending how to implement by asking questions concerning the reform. It says, keep the debate focused on leadership. Remind Congress how the crisis underscores the value of the IMF. The critics of this proposal need to answer a simple question. Remind Congress that the IMF is a good insurance policy. It's just one page after another of recommendations that the United Nations posted, y'all. I'm telling you, the United Nations is terribly involved in
really, if all these people and the United Nations want this to happen, you know it can't be good. The people in the United Nations, 80% don't like us.
Well, they're socialist internationalists. What do you expect? Just like Lagarde, I traced her down. She is a member of the European People's Party over in Europe.
Yep, those are communists. Socialists, they call them.
Socialists.
Right, Carol.
Sabian socialists, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
But anyway, I know I have kept y'all long enough. I know y'all got other things to report. But please listen to what JoJo and Joanne are telling you, and that this is one of the most critical situations that our country has ever been involved in. This is like when FDR was speaking, gave the speech on Pearl Harbor being bombed. And
right.
We are at a critical turning point in our country.
Yeah, well, we're losing our homeland. We are losing our homeland. We are losing our sovereignty. The globalists have already gone through the motions, you know. If this reform bill goes through, it's over,
well,
guys.
it won't have to worry about it because, like I said, April the 10th and 11th, and the G20 will take steps to do this. Even if we do not vote on it, if our legislators do not vote on it, the G20, April the 10th and 11th, will take steps to implement this.
You hear what she said? With or without the United States Congress and Senate voting on this, the UN says that they will take steps to pressure us into doing this anyhow. So just like Obama doesn't give a damn about our Congress, neither does the IMF.
Nope, that's exactly right, because it says G20s have stated that they will take aggressive measures to bypass the United States and its veto power over the International Monetary Executive Board by the April meeting. And the April meeting is April the 10th and 11th to enact the required supporting legislation for the international monetary reform. And this is the finance ministers and central bank governors meeting on April the 10th and 11th. Is what's going to do it.
Well, we're going to stay on top of this, and we're really going to have to make some noise now. You know, I'm about to go door to door and drag people in the streets. I'm so frustrated with all of this. Carol, I want to thank you very much for calling in, my friend.
Well, anytime. I hate that, I've taken up more time than what I intended, but it's just very stressful.
Yeah,
Thank you,
Carol. It's very stressful.
Well, honey, I love all y'all, and God bless y'all, and God bless each one of your listeners, and God help us with this that we're dealing with. Because I think we're going to see a judgment on us.
I'm praying for an awakening. You know, the Venezuelans are in the street. The Egyptians got in the street.
Well, anyway, I will talk to y'all later, and if something comes up, I'll holler at you. Bye.
All right,
Bye, Carol.
Bye-bye, Carol. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Carol Ray. All right, I want to bring up something else. We've talked about Obama and Soros and USAID trying to get rid of, all these people, like the Ukrainian people and the Egyptian people. Well, guess who else they're trying to get rid of now? Benjamin Netanyahu. Aaron Klein put out a good article. He says, in recent weeks, representatives for the Obama administration have held meetings with a senior political here in which the U.S. delegates brought up the possibility of replacing Benjamin Netanyahu as prime minister, according to an informed Jerusalem diplomat source. The meetings were held with Israel's popular finance minister, Yair Lapid, founder and leader of the Yesh Atid party, which became the second largest party in the Knesset, winning 19 seats in the last election. The diplomatic source said the Obama administration identified Lapid as a moderate who could be helpful in pushing the Israeli government into accepting the framework to create a future Palestinian state. According to the source, the talks included the possibility of Lapid bolting Netanyahu's government if the prime minister rejects the U.S. brokered regional talks. Lapid, however, is unlikely to abandon his government post over talks the Palestinians themselves have been less than enthusiastic about. So right here, they are telling you that they are trying to overthrow Bibi Netanyahu now because he is holding out with this Palestinian situation. He won't sign a suicide pact and split Jerusalem. So they want to get rid of Bibi and put in this guy Lapid, who will just be another asswipe for this administration. So there you have it. That is biblical, ladies and gentlemen. And like JoJo said when we first came on, Israel has closed their embassies, and this is about a workers' strike. But it's also holding back travel for the government and travel coming into Israel. Even the Pope planned visit in May is in doubt because of the strike measures. Now, I don't know. They're calling it an organization. It says here, Foreign Ministry Workers Committee declared a full-fledged strike on Sunday. So the Foreign Ministry Workers, that must be a union. So the unions are on strike, and they got Israel locked down now because of it. You know, if I were Bibi, I would probably do like Ronald Reagan did and just fire everybody and start over. Got anything to say about that, JoJo? No, I think she's on mute. All right, there's another thing we got to talk about here is Obama internet surrender.
Well, is my mic open?
It is now. Oh, your mic was open.
No, I've been talking to Carol, and nobody ever said anything, so I thought my mic was closed.
No, I could hear you.
Oh. Well, I wasn't sure. I kept saying, well, thank you, Carol, and I didn't hear nothing, so.
Yeah, your mic was open. This internet surrender, even Bill Clinton, one of the biggest globalists in the world, says that it threatens freedom.
Well, duh.
All right? Why would he want to give away the internet? I think I know why. So that this global body can shut us down. See, we have a constitution here that we pretend we have anyhow. And
right.
We have a First Amendment. So with the U.S. government being in control of the internet, they can't shut down sites unless they have probable cause and warrant and things like that, although they do anyhow. But if it's in the hands of a foreign body, they can shut us down anytime they want. And Obama can say, hey, it wasn't my problem. You know, I didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a way to silence dissent by giving away control of this internet. Plus, the United States has internet, too. Don't let this happen.
My understanding, we control the domain names and this, that, and the other, but it's a lot more to it than that. They're trying to, like, sugarcoat it, like, oh, well, it's just that we control who gets what domain name, but it's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, well, so does GoDaddy and other places. You know, they control domain names, and they're not giving it away.
Well,
I can't believe that. I can't even believe we're considering this.
He only has 2 years left. He has to hurry and shut us down all the way, people.
That's exactly right. He has to shut us down. Carol just told us all the reasons.
Yep.
Okay, we talked about the left-right paradigm, right, with the Republicans and Democrats. Well, you know, we're saying, okay, we're going to flip the House and we got to do this and we got to do that. We're going to flip the Senate. Well, we got Senator Mark Kirk. He's a Republican up in Illinois. There's a guy named Jim Oberweis, who's running against Dick Durbin. Do you know Mark Kirk said that he doesn't want to screw up his relationship with Dick Durbin, so he's not going to help out the Republican that's going against Dick Durbin. So that to me sounds like collusion.
Wait, hold for it. I thought Dick Durbin lost his seat already.
No, he's still a senator.
There was someone that, there's somebody else that lost. Well, whatever.
Yeah.
We'll look that up tomorrow.
Well, Dick Durbin is running again for Senate. And this guy Oberweis is contesting, is going against him to try to get that seat away from Dick Durbin. He's a Republican, Oberweis is. And Mark Kirk is a Republican. But instead of supporting the other Republican, Mark Kirk just figures, that's a loss anyhow, and why should he upset his relationship with Dick Durbin, who he thinks is a shoo-in, and he's not going to even help out Oberweis one bit.
Here's the whole problem. But this is the whole problem. Nobody wants to support the grassroots players. Let me just give Louisiana for an example. Bill Cassidy, he's an okay guy. He doesn't bring no meat to the table as far as I'm concerned. He has fluffy little bills. He's against Mary Landrieu. So he's allegedly the front runner. So everybody's going to say, oh, well, if I vote for Rob Maness, I might throw away my vote because Bill might be the only one that can beat Mary and blah, 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 blah. We need to vote for the right man. Vote for the right person. If we just keep doing the same thing over and over and over like we keep doing, it's called insanity. So I'm going to vote for the right person. If you want to vote for who you think, who you do whatever you want to do. But you need to start vetting the candidates and voting for the right person and letting the chips fall. That's my opinion.
Yeah, well, they are sticking up for each other. They're trying to keep the incumbents in. They don't want to lose their jobs, and they're going to help each other out, Republican or Democrat. They don't care. They want to keep their friends in because they got a good thing going. But it's up to the people to get rid of them. Like I said, the players change, but the game doesn't. So let's change the players.
We have to get new people. We have to get people in there that are one of us, that are us.
Right.
People like me and you. And
that to me,
if you're going to vote for a rhino, to try to keep a Democrat out, you're really not gaining no ground.
Mhm. You're right. A rhino and a Democrat, but here they are sticking up for each other, Kirk and Durbin. Kirk's not going to go against Durbin. So that sounds to me like collusion. That's the incumbents are colluding to keep their seats. They are not going to let any outsiders in. They're not going to help them in any way, and they are going to do whatever they can to keep the new people out.
Exactly. You know what Louis Gohmert said? Louis Gohmert said when he got elected to Congress, one of his first 2 or 3 meetings was not about what we're going to do. It was about what you have to do to get reelected. And I'm talking when he was a freshman Congress, and it was all about how to get reelected. It wasn't about what to do for the people.
That's right. From the minute they get elected, they start worrying about how they're going to get reelected. All they are is high-priced fundraisers. All right, Governor Scott Walker. Now, he seems all right, but he put a religious tweet out the other day. He said, let's see what he said. He said, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me," the verse reads. The atheists lost their minds because they were saying that, they accused the governor of misusing his authority to promote not just religion over non-religion, but one religion over another in a manner. All he did was quote the Philippians. But the atheists are trying to get him to retract that, and he said, no, he's not. He wasn't setting up a religion. He was not setting up a state religion. He was just quoting a Bible quote. If the atheists, who are perpetually pissed anyhow, can't handle it, don't listen to him. Don't read his tweets. Or tweet him back.
Or just don't vote for him. Or whatever. But leave the rest of us alone. You're a minority.
The atheists...
You're a minority. Go do it. I'm tired of these people pushing stuff down our throats. Live your life. Do what you want to do. I don't care if you're atheist. I don't care if you're gay. I don't care. That's your business. But leave me alone. I got my business, too.
Exactly. That's the beauty of our Bill of Rights. Those are individual rights. You have the right to say whatever you want. And another person has the right to say whatever they want. You can't shut them up, and they can't shut you up. Atheists have a right to exist, but so do Christians. Christians have rights, too. And they have a right to practice their religion.
If you don't like a cross at ground zero, if you don't like a cross at a military monument, then just don't look at it,
That's the final goal,
there.
That's the goal of the atheists, is they want all those crosses taken off of Arlington Cemetery.
Well, just don't go there.
Yeah, I read that. Crosses upset them, make them physically sick. If 2 pieces of metal or wood or whatever in the shape of a cross makes you sick, you got bigger problems than we can help you with. That's what I got to tell you. You don't like crosses? Don't look at them. You don't like the Star of David? Don't look. You don't like the crescent that the Muslims have? Don't look. A lot of those people don't like atheists. So what? They still exist.
You don't like the little nativity scene at Christmas? Don't look at that either.
That's right.
Leave the rest of us alone.
You have a freedom of religion, not from it.
If we don't like something, we don't buy it, we don't go there.
Yeah, well, the Constitution says that the state cannot form a religion, cannot force a religion on you. If, like in England, they had that, the king has his own religion there, the Episcopalians. It was an offshoot from the Catholics. But it was the state religion, and everybody had to be the Episcopalian over there because of the king. Well, that's what they were fighting against. The state cannot establish a religion. Governor Walker wasn't saying that you have to believe that. He was just stating what he believed, which is his right. He wasn't setting up a religion. So everybody back off, was my point.
Well, everybody's so touchy about everything. If they're touchy, then everything offends them. But, the majority of the population is Christian. And we need to start standing up for that, too.
Yeah. All right, let's do a quick headline lightning round here. Idaho governor signed an emergency legislation nullifying all future gun laws. This is from Ben Swan. On Thursday, Idaho Governor Butch Otter signed a bill which would effectively nullify future federal gun laws by prohibiting state enforcement of any future federal acts relating to personal firearms, accessories, or ammunition. S1332 passed the House by a vote of 68 to nothing, and the Senate by a vote of 34 to nothing. Alaska and Kansas have also passed similar laws, so they're nullifying federal gun laws. There's a gun range owner in New Jersey who says that about the gun magazine ban, he's not going to comply. While testifying before New Jersey lawmakers against a proposed ban on magazines larger than 10 rounds, gun range owner Anthony P. Calandro said, "I will not comply." Besides owning the Woodland Park Range in Woodland Park, New Jersey, Calandro owns a firearm training facility and is co-host of Gun for Hire Radio. According to Gun Save Lives, Calandro said a ban on magazines larger than 10 rounds would impact law-abiding citizens rather than criminals because it would turn 1 million law-abiding tax-paying citizens into criminals if signed into law. He then called lawmakers' attention to Connecticut and said 1 million gun owners in New Jersey are also going to say, like our brothers and sisters in the North, that we will not comply. I tell you here and now, I will not comply, he said. ISA issued subpoenas over the ATF sting. Remember we told you about that Squid's tattoo parlor and how they got the special needs guy to get a tattoo on him? He was using the mentally disabled people to run a phony gun store and rat on their friends and stuff. Well, ISA claimed this week that the ATF has stonewalled him by withholding documents and shown a complete lack of cooperation, so he issued subpoenas. I got a flashback here, too. The kid's name was Marquise Glover, but he wasn't sure that he even wanted a tattoo of a squid smoking a joint on his body, but they talked him into it. Okay, so now you're abusing handicapped people for your stings, and that's what ISA wanted that for. The courts also this week, Ulsterman put this out. He says that the court is to decide the legality of the Obama administration's action, and this is by Ulsterman. An important, but lost in the headline moment this week, is a 3-judge D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals hearing, which has the Obama administration scrambling to explain itself in regards to altering its own Obamacare law. The White House has been working double time preparing for this hearing, while purposely avoiding mentioning the case to the media. You may wonder why. Simple, because they could lose. Sorry to interrupt your feasting on America, Mr. President, but we might be in some trouble over here. This goes on, but he tells about how Obama was rewriting the Obamacare laws, and they're unaware of it, but it's tremendously significant. And the Obama administration has decided to change the clear language of the law and rule that HHS could provide subsidies to those who signed up on the federal exchange. Now, these are subsidies for people who didn't even buy into it. Now, Drudge, over the weekend, paid his penalty. He calls it a liberty tax. And the media went crazy saying, no, sir, those taxes don't even come in until next year. He said, no, I'm a small business owner. I pay my taxes quarterly. And that goes into effect this year, along with many other small businesses who file their taxes quarterly. So before you start flipping out on me, check your laws. Yeah, I paid my taxes and apologize, which they didn't. Green card holders who are not qualified for Medicare can get Obamacare. Remember when Joe Wilson stood up when Obama was saying that illegals are not eligible for this, and Joe Wilson said, you lie? Well, it turns out, yeah, illegals are. And legals with green cards, too, and legal immigrants. A Wisconsin school district dropped the Michelle Obama lunch program because they said the kids were throwing it away. And they were spending extra money on the vegetables and stuff, so the money that they're saving on the mandated vegetables and fruit, they can go back to their own thing and still provide the free lunches and save the money. And let's see, there's an Ebola outbreak, too, in Guinea. And 58 people have been affected so far. That's over in Africa near the Congo. And the most useless news of the day is Anthony Weiner has a new gig. Former New York Democratic Congressman Anthony Weiner is back after Business Insider announced that the failed mayoral candidate will pen a monthly political op-ed for the online publication. The new column, entitled Weena, aims to expose readers to the disgraced politician's unique combination of brashness and wonkiness. So that's it for us, guys. Jojo, you got any closing comments for our guests?
Just the usual, keep your powder dry, but better start paying attention and better start prepping. And just don't, it's not just prepping for some catastrophe. With inflation, if you catch something on sale, you better buy 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
Whatever it may be.
Yep. Oh, I missed one thing. I missed one thing, Jojo. DHS is holding exercises this week, and one of their targets is Free Americans Against Social Tyranny. So remember when they were practicing? Remember they were practicing on returning veterans and stuff? Well, now they're doing it again, but they're going after the Tea Party with their exercises. And aborted fetuses are being incinerated for energy over in England. All right.
I saw that headline. I didn't read it, but I find that just awfully hard to believe. But I'll read it.
They told the mothers that they were cremating the babies. They didn't say they were using them for heat. All right, that's it. That's all we got. Jojo, say good night, everybody. All right, folks. Thank you, Jojo. It's all the time we have for today, and we hope you enjoyed our show. Remember, we're here on Monday nights at 8 p.m. To all our listeners, everybody who called in, all the cool people in the chat rooms, thank you. Anna, Lynn, AstroTurf, great job. Cal, I saw you in there. Great job, hon. Thank you to our special guests, Carol Ray and Kiko Reed. Thank you very, very much. And as always, special thank you to my great co-host, JoJo Norton. Stay tuned to PRN because coming up all week, tomorrow is Bobby and Denise. On Wednesday is Watchman Wednesday. An old Bulldog show is still running. They got a couple of guys that are doing it. I forget their names now. But stay tuned to PRN, and thank you, Watchmen. On that note, good night.